Ladies and gentlemen, how many mornings have you woken up feeling defeated? Before the day even begins, you replay what went wrong yesterday, last month, or even years ago, and the pattern continues. In this message, we're going to break that cycle. The problem we're solving today is self-pity, that quiet, paralyzing emotion that whispers, "Why me?" and steals your present moment. If you're tired of living in that space, if you're ready to stop being a victim of your own thoughts, then you're exactly where you need to be. There is a moment often silent when your soul grows tired of the same story. A story of pain, of being overlooked, of things not going your way. And in that silence, something beautiful is waiting. The decision to no longer feel sorry for yourself. Because sorrow is a weight, not a solution. And the truth is, you were never meant to carry it forever. You are not broken. You are not too late. You are not a victim of what didn't work out. What you are right now is powerful beyond the noise in your head. This isn't about ignoring your emotions. It's about no longer becoming them. Today we stop identifying with the sadness. Today we choose something better: self-leadership. There is a subtle seduction in feeling sorry for yourself. It disguises itself as self-care, as tenderness, as a deserved moment of rest. But what begins as comfort quickly morphs into captivity. You find yourself lingering in that space a little longer each time until it becomes your default emotion. And without noticing, you've begun to operate from that state, not just occasionally, but daily. You wear your sorrow like a second skin, convincing yourself it's part of your personality. But it isn't. It's a pattern, and patterns can be changed when you indulge in self-pity. You're giving life to your limitations. You're feeding your wounds, not healing them. You're rehearsing the reasons why you can't, why it's unfair, why they don't understand, and in that loop, become disconnected from your inner power. Self-pity doesn't just whisper, "Poor me," it shouts, "Powerless me." And the more you believe in that story, the more the world begins to mirror it back to you. Tell me, the opportunities shrink, the relationships sour, and the days blur into sameness. Not because you're unlucky, but because you're looking through a lens stained with sorrow. Power, real, spiritual, unshakable power, cannot thrive in the soil of self-pity. Because power requires responsibility. Power says, no matter what happened to me, I get to decide what happens next. But self-pity traps you in the past. It tells you that what happened is who you are. And that's the lie that keeps you from growing. You may have been hurt, you may have failed, you may have been mistreated. But those are events. You are not an event. You are a living consciousness capable of deciding what those mean, and more importantly, capable of deciding what you do with them. When you stop and observe your thoughts during moments of self-pity, you'll often hear phrases like, "No one gets it," "I always have to suffer," "It's never fair for me." These thoughts feel familiar because you've said them often, not out loud, but in the quiet corners of your mind. And they've shaped your world more than you realize. But here's the thing, your mind believes what you feed it consistently. Tell me, if you feed it powerlessness, it will protect you by keeping you small. If you feed it fear, it will try to keep you safe by avoiding risk. But if you begin to feed it strength, it will open up new internal doorways. It's not your circumstances that shape your power. It's the narrative you tell yourself about those circumstances. Think of someone walking through a storm with their shoulders slumped and their gaze to the ground. That posture isn't about the weather, it's about the attitude. Now imagine someone in the same storm, but their head is up. Tell me, they're soaked too, but their eyes are scanning the horizon for shelter, not sympathy. That shift in posture doesn't change the storm, but it changes what they'll do next. Self-pity keeps your head down. It keeps you looking at the mud, the mess, the injustice. But if you would lift your eyes just for a moment, you'd see that beyond the storm is a field of possibility. And it's waiting for your arrival. Most people think power comes from external validation, from people cheering you on, supporting you, understanding you. But real power isn't dependent on being understood. It doesn't need applause, it's quiet. It comes from knowing, even in your lowest moment, that you still get to decide how you show up, that no one gets to choose your internal state but you, that no matter how much has gone wrong there is still something deeply right about who you are. Self-pity makes you forget that. It distracts you with reasons to stop moving forward. And the world doesn't wait while you sit in sorrow. Time moves. Opportunities pass, growth pauses, not because you're not worthy, but because your focus, not where your power lives, your focus is on what didn't work. Tell me, what didn't happen, who didn't show up? But your future has nothing to do with that. Your future is created by what you decide to believe now. Do you believe you're powerless, or do you believe you're powerful? That's not just a mindset, it's a spiritual decision. A decision to stop feeding the emotions that shrink you, a decision to stop replaying the scene where you lost and instead start writing the scene where you rise. There is a moment in every person's life when they confuse their experience with their identity. Something painful happens, and instead of letting it pass through, they let it settle within. They begin to say, this is just who I am now. Not they want to live like that, but because they've mistaken their past for their permanent truth. But you are not what happened to you, are not the heartbreak, the betrayal, the failure, the injustice. You are the awareness that experienced it. You are the observer who felt it, not the feeling itself. When you were a child, your entire world was shaped by how others treated you. If you were neglected, you felt invisible. If you were hurt, you felt broken. But as adults, we forget that we have a choice now. We have the ability to separate who we are from what we went through. Yet most people don't do this. They carry pain into every room they enter. They replay their past in every conversation. Their identity becomes entangled with the wounds they never addressed. And with every retelling of that story, they make it more real, more rooted, more of them. But the soul was never meant to live inside the past. It thrives in presence, it grows in expansion. You were not sent here to relive what already happened. You were sent here to transcend it. The events of your life are not life sentences. They are teachers, they are mirrors, they are awakenings, but they're not definitions of who you are. Tell me, you are not your trauma, you are not your mistake, you are not the abandonment or the disappointment. You are the being who survived it, and more importantly, you are the one who is standing, still breathing, still capable of turning it all into something higher. We've been conditioned to believe that healing means forgetting, that moving on means burying the pain. But that's not true. Healing is not denial. Healing is remembrance without attachment. It is the power to say, yes, that happened to me, but I am not frozen in that moment anymore. It's being able to visit the memory without losing your present peace. Because the real tragedy is not what occurred, it's how long you let you control reach your highest self. If you're still clinging to a version of you that was hurt, abandoned, or overlooked. Tell me, people will often say things like, this is just how I am because of I've been through, but that's only one version of the truth. Tell me, the deeper truth is that who you are is ever evolving. You are not stuck in your origin story. You have permission to edit your narrative. You have the authority to shift from victim to creator. But the transformation begins when you stop looking backward with longing or resentment. The past is not your enemy, but it cannot be your home. You can carry its lessons without carrying its labels. There's a stillness that arrives when you finally understand that your value was never diminished by what occurred. You may have felt broken, but you were never less worthy. You may have been rejected, but you were never less lovable. The experience only has the power to define you if you let it, and too many people give it that power because they've never been taught how to separate identity from experience. Tell me, they keep using I am statements that bind them to the past. I am damaged, I am unlucky, I am always abandoned. But none of those are facts. They are conclusions drawn from pain. Tell me, the moment you stop repeating the story of your suffering, you open a portal to something greater. You begin to see yourself not as the character in the tragedy, but as the author of a much bigger narrative. One where your past becomes the foundation, not the prison, where the storm becomes the reason you learn to fly. Because what happened to you was never meant to be your identity. It was meant to reveal, it was meant to wake you up to the power that lies within. Tell me, And once you realize that you are not what happened to you, you reclaim your right to become who you truly are. There's a moment when everything begins to shift, not because the world around you changes, but because you decide to stop waiting for it to. That moment is called responsibility, not the heavy, burdensome kind that feels like pressure, but the liberating kind that whispers, I have the power to choose how I respond to life. Most people misunderstand responsibility. They confuse it with blame, with guilt, with shame. But true responsibility is not about carrying the weight of the world. It's about reclaiming your place in it. Tell me, it's not saying that everything is your fault. It's saying that your future is still your choice, even if your past wasn't. There's immense freedom in that understanding, because as long as you keep pointing outward at the people who wronged you, the situations that hurt you, the circumstances that limited, you're giving them authority over your life. You're saying, I cannot be free until they change. But what if they never change? What if they never apologize, never acknowledge what they did, never show up the way you hoped they would? Does that mean you stay stuck? The answer is no. Tell me, your freedom does not require their cooperation. It only requires your decision. The turning point in anyone's life comes when they stop needing a reason to grow, when they stop needing someone else to validate their pain or fix their wounds. Tell me, when they say this happened, yes, but now I get to choose what I do with it, that's responsibility. It's the internal pivot where victimhood ends and personal power begins. And until you make that pivot, you will live at the mercy of your memories. You will keep revisiting the same emotional scenery, wondering why nothing ever changes, unaware that the key to change was always in your hands. Tell me, taking responsibility means you stop waiting to be rescued. You stop hoping that someone will finally understand, finally support. You finally make things right, because deep down you already know that no one is coming to save you. And strangely, that's not a sad truth, it's a powerful one. It means you are the author now. It means your healing doesn't depend on external permission. It means you can begin right here, right now, with whatever you have exactly as you are. Responsibility shifts your focus from reaction to creation. When you're caught in reaction, life feels like it's happening to you. Tell me, you're constantly trying to keep up, to defend, to survive. When you move into creation, you start to ask different questions. Not why did this happen to me, but what can I do with this? Not who will fix this for me, but how can I rise from this? You stop seeing yourself as the product of your past and start seeing yourself as the architect of your next chapter. That shift changes everything. It changes how you wake up, how you move, how you speak, how you think. This doesn't mean ignoring your emotions or bypassing your pain. It means becoming so grounded in awareness self that you can feel deeply without drowning. It means sitting with your story and choosing to rewrite its meaning. Because the real chains are never external, they're the beliefs we hold about ourselves. And when you choose responsibility, you start breaking those chains one by one. You start saying, I am not at the mercy of what happened. I am not stuck in who I was. I am willing to do the work to become someone new. The moment you take responsibility, life stops being random. You begin to see that everything carries a lesson, a mirror, a message. You realize that even the hardest moments were pointing you back to yourself, asking you to wake up. Tell me. And when you do, you reclaim your time, voice your direction. You stop wasting your energy, blaming, resenting, regretting. You can't tell me. Instead, you use that energy to build, to rise, to create something that reflects who you truly are, not who pain made you pretend to be. And that's the quiet truth no one talks about. Tell me. Responsibility is not a burden, it's a gift. It's the gateway to real peace. Because once you realize that your power doesn't come from controlling everything, but from owning your part in it. Life softens. It becomes less about defending yourself and more about discovering yourself. You begin to move with intention instead of reaction. You stop waiting for the world to align perfectly before you begin. You start where you are with what you have, and you begin to create momentum from within. Tell me. Responsibilities, you back your voice. Clarity, it gives you the strength to stand tall even when life shakes around you. And in that stillness you discover a version of yourself that you didn't know existed, the version who is no longer a reflection, the longer reflection, who is longer a reflection of the wounds, but a reflection of the wisdom gained through them. That version is not waiting for a better past. That version is focused on a better present. Because the present is where all your power lies, not in the stories of what was. Tell me. But in the decision to become something more than what you've been. There's a moment when you realize that emotions are powerful, but they are not always true. They are messengers, not masters. Tell me. They rise and fall like waves influenced by memories, moods, and moments that have little to do with the life you want to build. And if you allow those emotions to steer the direction of your life, you'll always be reacting. You'll always be waiting to feel ready, feel better, or feel motivated before you take action. But the truth is, emotion is not the compass of transformation. Intention is emotions have value. They let you know when something hurts, when something feels off, when something needs healing. But they are not meant to dictate your decisions. You can feel exhausted and still take the first step. You can feel afraid and still speak the truth. You can feel sad and still show up for your life with purpose. That's the power of intention. It doesn't ask you to be in a perfect emotional state. It only asks you to decide what matters more, how you feel in the moment, or who you want to become. Most people don't know the difference between reacting emotionally and living intentional wake. They wake up in a mood and let that mood shape their entire day. They get caught in the residue of yesterday's pain and bring it in today's opportunities. Without realizing it, they hand over control to their emotional state, and they wonder why life feels chaotic, why it lacks direction. But direction doesn't come from mood swings. It comes from anchored decisions. It comes from a clear intention that says, no matter how I feel today, I know who I am, and I know where I'm going. Tell me. This is not about suppressing your emotions, it's about leading them. It's about becoming the observer rather than the prisoner. When sadness comes, you say, I see you, and I'll listen, but I won't build my identity around you. When anger flares, you acknowledge it without letting it burn down. What you've built when fear arrives, you welcome it. As a visitor, not a ruler. Emotions are temporary guests. Intention is the steady foundation underneath it all. And when you begin to live from that place, your actions become less erratic and more aligned. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to lead your life instead of being dragged by it. Tell me. One of the greatest misunderstandings in personal growth is the idea that you have to wait until you feel better before you take action. But healing doesn't always feel good. Growth is uncomfortable. Courage feels like fear at first. Intention cuts through that noise. It says, doesn't feel easy. But I'm not here to feel comfortable. I'm here to grow. And with that mindset, you begin to show up differently. You no longer let disappointment pull you into despair. You no longer let doubt stop you from trying, because intention overrides emotional turbulence. It holds steady even when everything around you feels uncertain. When you shift from emotion to intention, you stop asking, how do I feel about this? And start asking, is this aligned with who I'm becoming? That one question will save you years of hesitation. Tell me. It will pull you out of emotional cycles to keep you stuck, because emotions are often rooted in your past, but intention is rooted in your vision. Emotions remind you of who you were. Intention directs you toward who you're becoming. That's why it's so powerful. It allows you to walk through discomfort without being defined by it. Think about how many decisions you've delayed because your emotions weren't ready. How many conversations you avoided. How many dreams you shelved. How many times you told yourself, not now, because you didn't feel confident enough, healed enough, happy enough. But intention doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for honesty, it asks for presence, and most of all, it asks for choice, to take one step forward, even if your emotions scream for you to stay still, the choice to speak your truth, even if your voice shakes, the choice to move, to act, to build, even when it hurts. This shift is the difference between people who live in loops in growth and people in growth, because loops are emotional. They keep you repeating the same thoughts, the same habits, the same outcomes. Tell me. But growth is intentional. It breaks cycles. It interrupts patterns. It says, this feeling is familiar, but this time I choose differently. That's how change really happens, not in some grand breakthrough, but in the small, quiet moments when you choose to lead with intention instead of emotion. When you finally decide to stop feeling sorry for yourself, everything changes, not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you begin to see it differently. You recognize that self-pity, no matter how comforting in the moment, is a slow erosion of your power. It disguises itself as self-compassion, but keeps you locked place, repeating the same patterns, waiting for something or someone to change your life, but no one is coming. Tell me. And that's not a reason to despair. It's the beginning of your liberation. You are not what happened to you, are not the collection of your past wounds, your missed chances, or your broken moments. You are the one who is still here, still breathing, still capable of choosing again. And that choice begins the moment you stop blaming what was and start creating what will be. That shift is called responsibility. Tell me, the kind that doesn't carry shame, but instead activates your power. The kind that says, I own my mindset, I own my path, I own my energy no matter what life throws at me. And through that responsibility, you begin to live with intention, not ruled by the temporary emotions that come and go, but guided by the deeper truth of who you are and why you're here. Tell me. You begin to act not based on how you feel, but based on who you're becoming, and in doing so, you awaken a strength that was never gone, only buried beneath stories that no longer serve you. Tell me. This isn't about pretending to be unaffected. It's about remembering that you are always more than your circumstances. It's about showing up for your life, even when it's hard, because you finally believe that your story doesn't end in sorrow, it begins in choice. Tell me, it evolves in clarity, and it transforms in the quiet, powerful moment when you decide, I will not let self-pity lead my life. I will rise, I will create, I will become.